I was staring at the certified letter from the Sunset Ridge HOA when my wife Maria walked into the kitchen and saw my face turning red. "What is it now?" she asked, pouring herself coffee. "They want me to remove the solar panels," I said, my voice tight. "We have 30 days to comply or face daily fines of $200. Maria set down her mug hard enough that coffee sloshed onto the counter. "Are you kidding me? We just spent $40,000 installing those panels 3 months ago." I looked back at the letter, signed with an overly flourished signature by Patricia Dunmore, HOA president. The same Patricia who had smiled at us during the neighborhood barbecue last summer and told us how wonderful it was that young families were moving into Sunset Ridge, a planned community in Gilbert, Arizona. The same Patricia who now apparently found our roof-mounted solar array to be an eyesore that violated the community's aesthetic standards. According to this, the panels are visible from the street and don't match the approved color palette for roofing materials. I read aloud. They claim it degrades property values and violates Section 4.7 of the CC and Articles regarding exterior modifications. "But we submitted an application before installation," Maria protested. "The Architectural Review Committee approved it. I have the email." I pulled up my email on my phone and found the exchange from last November. Sure enough, there was the approval from someone named Dennis Watts, who identified himself as the ARC chairman. The approval was clear. Solar panel installation on the south-facing roof sections was permitted, subject to professional installation and local building codes. "We have the approval right here," I said, showing Maria. "This doesn't make any sense." "Call them," Maria said. "This has to be a mistake." I looked at the number on the letterhead and dialed. After 4 rings, a woman answered with a clipped voice. "Sunset Ridge HOA Management Office. Hi, this is James Chen. I live at 8847 East Desert Bloom Drive. I just received a violation notice about my solar panels, but I have written approval from the Architectural Committee. One moment, please." The line went silent for nearly 3 minutes. When the voice returned, it was different, older, with that particular tone of someone who enjoyed wielding small amounts of power. "Mr. Chen, this is Patricia Dunmore, HOA president. Yes, we sent that notice. The solar panels need to be removed. But I have approval from Dennis Watts, the ARC chairman. It's in writing." "Mr. Watts is no longer with the committee," Patricia said smoothly. "And upon review, we've determined that approval was issued in error. The panels are not in compliance with our community standards. In error. We spent $40,000 based on that approval. The panels are already installed and operational." "That's unfortunate, but it doesn't change the violation. You have 30 days from receipt of the letter. Good day, Mr. Chen." She hung up before I could respond. Maria was watching my face. "That bad?" She said. "The approval was issued in error and we have to remove them anyway." "Can she do that?" I sat down heavily at the kitchen table, my mind racing. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." The next morning, I took a personal day from my job as a software engineer and drove to a law office in downtown Phoenix. I had found an attorney named Robert Hernandez who specialized in HOA disputes. His website mentioned solar panel cases specifically, which seemed promising. Hernandez was in his 50s with graying hair and a confident handshake. His office walls were covered with framed newspaper articles about various cases. I explained the situation while he took notes on a yellow legal pad. "You have the original approval in writing?" he asked. I showed him the email on my phone and he nodded. "That's good. And the panels are fully installed and operational?" "Yes, we've been generating electricity for 3 months now. Our power bill dropped from an average of $300 a month to about $40. Hernandez smiled. "Even better. Mr. Chen, I need to ask you something important. Are you familiar with Arizona Revised Statutes Section 33 to 1816? I shook my head. It's a state law that specifically prohibits HOAs from banning solar panels. It's been on the books since 2009, and there have been several amendments strengthening it. Basically, an HOA cannot prohibit the installation or use of solar energy devices. They can impose reasonable restrictions about placement and appearance, but they cannot ban them outright or make the restrictions so burdensome that they effectively prevent installation. I felt a surge of relief. So they can't make me remove them. Not only can they not make you remove them, but if they try to fine you or take legal action, you can countersue for attorney's fees and damages. The law is very clear on this, and Arizona courts have consistently ruled in favor of homeowners. There's a case from 2018, Montoya versus Bella Vista HOA, where the judge not only ruled for the homeowner but also sanctioned the HOA board members personally for pursuing litigation in bad faith. So, what should I do? Hernandez leaned back in his chair. First, I'm going to draft a response to their violation notice. We'll cite the state statute and make it clear that you're protected by law. We'll also point out that you had written approval, which means they're trying to retroactively revoke permission they already granted. That's problematic for them on multiple levels. Will that stop them? Honestly, it depends on how reasonable your HOA president is. Some board members back down immediately when they realize they're on the wrong side of state law. Others double down and force homeowners to take them to court. From what you've told me about this Patricia Dunmore, I'm guessing she might be the doubling down type. He was right. 2 weeks after Hernandez sent his letter to the HOA, I received another certified letter. This one informed me that my violation had been referred to the HOA's legal counsel, and that I was now facing daily fines of $200, retroactive to the date of the original notice. They had also placed a lien on my property for the unpaid fines, which they calculated at $3,600. Maria was furious. They put a lien on our house. Can they do that? Apparently they think they can, I said, scanning the letter. But Hernandez said this might happen. I called the attorney's office and got an appointment for the next day. When I showed him the new letter, Hernandez actually smiled. Perfect, he said. Perfect. They're fining us $200 a day and they've put a lien on our house. Yes, and they've just handed us an excellent case. Mr. Chen, at this point I recommend we file a lawsuit against the HOA. We'll seek an injunction to stop the fines, removal of the lien, and damages for your legal fees and emotional distress. We'll also ask the court to rule that the HOA violated state law. How much will this cost? I work on contingency for cases like this. If we win, and I'm confident we will, the HOA will pay my fees as part of the judgment. You won't pay anything unless you want to. And if we lose, we won't. The law is ironclad, and they've made it worse by imposing fines and a lien after being notified of the state statute. That shows bad faith. Trust me, I've handled a dozen cases like this. We've won every single one. I thought about Maria's stress, about our savings tied up in the solar panels, about the principle of the thing. Okay, let's do it. The lawsuit was filed in Maricopa County Superior Court 3 days later. Hernandez had moved fast, and within a week, we had a hearing scheduled for a temporary restraining order to stop the fines while the case proceeded. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about facing Patricia Dunmore in court, about what this would mean for our relationship with our neighbors. Sunset Ridge was a nice community. We had friends on our street, people we barbecued with, whose kids played with our daughter Emma. Would this turn everyone against us? Maria must have sensed my thoughts. She rolled over in bed and put her hand on my shoulder. "You're doing the right thing," she said quietly. "We can't let them bully us into spending $40,000 to remove something we installed legally and with permission." I know. I just wish it didn't have to be this way. Patricia Dunmore made it this way, not you. The courtroom was smaller than I expected and surprisingly empty. Just us, Hernandez, Patricia Dunmore, and an attorney I assumed was representing the HOA. Patricia wore a navy suit and had her blonde hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She glared at me as I took my seat. Judge Michelle Reeves entered, and we all stood. She was a black woman in her 40s with an expression that suggested she had very little patience for nonsense. "This is a hearing on plaintiff's motion for a temporary restraining order," Judge Reeves said, looking at her papers. "Mr. Hernandez, you represent the plaintiff?" "Yes, Your Honor. Explain briefly why your client needs an emergency order." Hernandez stood. "Your Honor, my client installed solar panels on his roof after receiving written approval from the HOA's Architectural Review Committee. 3 months later, the HOA sent him a violation notice demanding removal of the panels. When we responded with a letter citing Arizona Revised Statutes Section 33 to 1816, which prohibits HOAs from banning solar energy devices, the HOA responded by imposing daily fines of $200 and placing a lien on his property. The fines now exceed $5,000 and continue to accumulate. We need an immediate order stopping these unlawful fines and removing the lien." Judge Reeves turned to the HOA's attorney, a man in his 60s with a red face. "Mr. Morrison, response." Morrison stood. "Your Honor, this is a matter of contract law. When Mr. Chen purchased his home, he agreed to be bound by the CC and Artiques of Sunset Ridge. Those covenants give the HOA authority to regulate exterior modifications to maintain property values and aesthetic consistency. The solar panels are visible from the street and do not comply with approved materials. Are you familiar with ARS 33 to 1816? Judge Reeves asked. "We are, Your Honor, but we believe the statute allows for reasonable restrictions, and these panels violate." "Have you read the statute, Mr. Morrison?" There was a pause. "I've reviewed it, yes." "Then you know it specifically states that HOAs cannot prohibit solar devices and cannot impose restrictions that significantly increase the cost or decrease the efficiency of the system. Mr. Hernandez, how much did these panels cost?" $40,000, Your Honor. "And they're roof-mounted on a south-facing section." "Yes, Your Honor, the most efficient placement for solar panels in Arizona." Judge Reeves looked at Morrison. "So your client is demanding removal of a $40,000 solar system that was professionally installed in the optimal location after your architectural committee gave written approval. And you're doing this despite clear state law protecting solar installations. Do I have that right?" Morrison's face got redder. "Your Honor, the approval was issued in error by a committee member who is no longer." "I don't care if it was issued by Santa Claus," Judge Reeves interrupted. "It was written approval from the authorized committee. Your client can't retroactively revoke approval after the homeowner spent $40,000 in reliance on it. That's basic promissory estoppel, first-year law school stuff." She wrote something on her papers. "The temporary restraining order is granted. The HOA is ordered to immediately cease all fines related to the solar panels and to remove the lien from Mr. Chen's property within 5 business days. We'll schedule a full hearing on the merits, but let me be clear, Mr. Morrison. You need to advise your client that this case is a loser. State law is unambiguous and the facts are terrible for the HOA. If this goes to trial, I will not only rule against your client, but I will seriously consider sanctions for pursuing baseless litigation. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Good. This hearing is adjourned." The whole thing had taken maybe 15 minutes. As we left the courtroom, I felt like I could breathe again for the first time in weeks. Patricia Dunmore rushed past us without making eye contact, her heels clicking rapidly on the tile floor. In the hallway, Hernandez shook my hand. "That went well. Will they drop it now?" "They should. The judge basically told them they're going to lose, but we'll see." I drove home and told Maria everything. She hugged me hard and we opened a bottle of wine to celebrate. Emma, our 6-year-old, wanted to know why we were happy, and I tried to explain in terms she could understand. "Some people didn't like the special panels on our roof that help make electricity from sunshine," I said. "But the judge said the panels are good and we can keep them." "I like the panels," Emma said seriously. They look like robot windows. That made us laugh, and for a few hours, I forgot about the HOA drama and just enjoyed being with my family. But Patricia Dunmore wasn't done. 3 days later, I got a call from my neighbor Jeff Martinez. Jeff was a friendly guy in his 30s who lived 2 houses down. We sometimes shot hoops in his driveway and talked about sports. "Hey James, I just wanted to give you a heads up," Jeff said. He sounded uncomfortable. "Patricia Dunmore came by my house this afternoon. She was going door to door talking about your solar panels." My stomach sank. What was she saying? She's claiming that solar panels decrease property values and that if we let you keep yours, soon everyone will have them and the neighborhood will look like an industrial park. She asked me to sign a petition to demand you remove them. Did you sign it? Hell no, man. I think your panels are cool. I'm actually thinking about getting some myself, but I thought you should know she's campaigning against you. Thanks for telling me, Jeff. I appreciate it. After hanging up, I immediately called Hernandez. The HOA president is going door to door with a petition against me. That's interesting, Hernandez said. It shows she's not backing down despite the judge's warning. Keep track of anyone who tells you about this. Document everything. Over the next week, I heard from 3 more neighbors that Patricia had visited them. One of them, an older woman named Carol Peterson, actually came to our house to apologize. "I signed her petition before I really understood what it was about," Carol said, standing on our doorstep looking embarrassed. "Patricia made it sound like you had done something illegal. But then I talked to my son, and he explained about the state law protecting solar panels. I just wanted you to know I support you and I regret signing that thing." "It's okay, Carol," I said. "I appreciate you coming by. Your panels don't bother me at all," she continued. "And honestly, Patricia Dunmore has gotten way too controlling about this neighborhood. Last year she tried to fine the Johnsons because their Christmas lights were up until January 3rd. It's getting ridiculous." After Carol left, Maria and I talked about what to do. "She's trying to turn the neighborhood against us," Maria said. "I know, but what can we do about it?" "Maybe we should go to an HOA meeting. Explain our side." I had never been to an HOA meeting. In the 3 years we'd lived in Sunset Ridge, I had paid my dues and ignored the occasional newsletters. Now I looked up when the next meeting was scheduled. It was in 5 days at the community center. "Okay," I said. "Let's go." The community center was a low stucco building near the front of the neighborhood. When Maria and I arrived on Thursday evening, there were already about 30 people in the meeting room, sitting in rows of folding chairs. Patricia Dunmore sat at a table in front with 2 other board members, a thin man I didn't recognize and a woman in her 50s. Patricia's eyes narrowed when she saw us enter. We took seats near the back. The meeting started with standard business: approval of last month's minutes, a financial report, discussion of landscaping contracts for the common areas. It was all mind-numbingly boring, and I started to wonder if we'd wasted our time coming. Then Patricia cleared her throat. "Under new business, I want to address a serious issue affecting our community. As many of you know, there's currently a situation involving solar panels that violate our community standards." I felt everyone's eyes turn toward us. "The board sent a violation notice," Patricia continued, "but instead of complying, the homeowner hired a lawyer and sued the HOA. This lawsuit is costing our community thousands of dollars in legal fees, money that comes from all of our dues." Someone in the front row raised their hand. "Why don't they just take down the panels if they're in violation?" Patricia smiled like a cat that had caught a mouse. "That's an excellent question. The homeowner is hiding behind a state law that supposedly protects solar panels. But that law was intended to protect reasonable solar installations, not eyesores that damage property values for everyone." I stood up. My heart was pounding. "That's not true." Patricia's smile disappeared. "Excuse me, that's not true," I repeated louder. Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 33 to 1816, specifically prohibits HOAs from banning solar energy devices. It's been law since 2009, and I didn't violate any community standards. I submitted an application to the Architectural Review Committee and received written approval before installing the panels. The approval was issued in error, Patricia said coldly. That's not my problem. I relied on that approval and spent $40,000. You can't retroactively revoke permission after I've already installed everything. A man I recognized as Dave Sullivan, who lived on the next street over, stood up. I saw your panels, James. They don't look bad at all. You can barely see them from the street. They're visible, Patricia snapped, and they set a precedent. If we allow this, soon we'll have solar panels everywhere, and property values will plummet. Actually, said another voice, and I saw Jeff Martinez standing, studies show that solar panels increase property values. Buyers like lower electric bills and environmental benefits. I read that homes with solar sell for about 4% more on average. Patricia's face was turning red. This isn't about property values alone. It's about maintaining the aesthetic character of Sunset Ridge. We have standards. What about state law? Someone else called out. If the law says he can have solar panels, isn't that the end of it? The law allows reasonable restrictions, Patricia said. And we believe. The judge didn't agree with you, I interrupted. Judge Reeves issued a temporary restraining order stopping your fines and requiring you to remove the lien from my property. She specifically said the HOA's case was a loser and that state law was unambiguous. The room erupted in conversation. Several people were clearly on my side, but others looked uncertain or annoyed. Patricia banged a gavel on the table. Order, this is not a debate. The board has decided to pursue this matter, and that's final. With our money, Dave Sullivan called out. How much are we spending on this lawsuit? Patricia hesitated. Legal costs are privileged information. Not when it's coming from our dues, Dave shot back. We have a right to know how the board is spending community funds. The thin man next to Patricia leaned over and whispered something to her. She looked annoyed but nodded. So far, legal costs are approximately $12,000. The room exploded again. $12,000 was roughly 40 households' annual dues. You've spent $12 grand fighting solar panels that are protected by state law, someone shouted. This is insane, another voice agreed. Patricia was losing control of the meeting. She banged the gavel repeatedly. The board has a fiduciary duty to protect property values and enforce the CC and Articus. We are acting in the best interests of the community. I want a vote, Dave Sullivan said. I move that the board drop the lawsuit against James Chen and recognize his right to have solar panels under state law. Second, Jeff Martinez called out. That's not how this works, Patricia sputtered. The board has authority. The homeowners can override the board, Dave said. He was clearly more familiar with HOA procedure than I was. I'm calling for a special vote of the membership. We need a majority of homeowners to agree. Patricia looked like she wanted to argue, but the other two board members were whispering urgently to her. Finally, she said, Fine. We'll conduct a vote by written ballot. It will take 30 days to properly notify all homeowners and collect ballots. That's acceptable, Dave said, sitting down. Maria squeezed my hand. I couldn't believe what had just happened. The meeting continued for another 20 minutes, but I barely heard any of it. I was too busy processing the fact that a significant portion of my neighbors had just stood up for me. As people filed out afterward, several came over to shake my hand or offer words of support. Carol Peterson hugged Maria. Jeff and Dave both told me to call if I needed anything, but not everyone was friendly. A couple I didn't know walked past, and the woman said loudly, Some people just don't care about the community, and her husband nodded agreement. Patricia left without looking at us. In the parking lot, Dave Sullivan approached us. Hey, I hope that wasn't too crazy in there. Thank you for speaking up, I said. I really appreciate it. No problem. Honestly, I've been annoyed with Patricia for a while. She's way too controlling. But this solar panel thing is nuts. You have a right to put panels on your own house, especially when state law protects it. Why is she so obsessed with this? Maria asked. Dave glanced around and lowered his voice. Between us. I think Patricia sees herself as guardian of Sunset Ridge's prestige. She moved here from Scottsdale when it was developed 10 years ago, and she's always been super concerned with property values and appearances. She drives a Mercedes. She's on 3 different charity boards. She's all about image. I think she genuinely believes that solar panels make the neighborhood look lower class. That's ridiculous, Maria said. I agree, but that's Patricia. She's used to getting her way and she doesn't like being challenged. Over the next month, I tried to go about normal life. Work was busy with a new software deployment. Emma had school activities. Maria was training for a half marathon, but the HOA situation hung over everything like a cloud. Hernandez called me with updates. The HOA had filed a response to our lawsuit, still arguing they had the right to regulate solar panels despite state law. He wasn't worried. Their argument is basically that the statute doesn't mean what it clearly says, Hernandez explained. No judge is going to buy it. But they're entitled to make their case. The ballot vote was conducted over 4 weeks. Every homeowner in Sunset Ridge received a packet explaining the issue, and a ballot asking whether the HOA should continue pursuing legal action against my solar panels. Dave Sullivan and a few other neighbors had organized an email campaign encouraging people to vote no. Patricia, of course, sent her own emails arguing that dropping the lawsuit would mean abandoning the HOA's authority to enforce any standards. When the results were announced at the next HOA meeting, I held my breath. Out of 287 households in Sunset Ridge, 189 had returned ballots. Of those, 127 voted to drop the lawsuit, 62 voted to continue it. Patricia looked like she had been slapped. The other 2 board members, who I had learned were named Frank Davies and Susan Ortega, both looked relieved. The membership has spoken, Frank said. I move that we direct our attorney to withdraw from the litigation and notify Mr. Chen that the HOA will not pursue further action regarding his solar panels. Second, Susan said immediately. You can't do this, Patricia said, but her voice lacked conviction. We have to, Frank said. The homeowners voted, that's how this works. Patricia stared at the table for a long moment. Then she gathered her papers. Fine, but I'm resigning from the board effective immediately. I can't be part of an HOA that doesn't enforce its own rules. She stood and walked out. A few people applauded, which seemed harsh, but I understood the sentiment. Frank took over as acting president and the meeting continued. Later that week, I received a letter from Morrison, the HOA's attorney, formally notifying me that all claims against me were dismissed with prejudice, and that the HOA would pay my attorney's fees as part of a settlement. Hernandez called, sounding pleased. They're offering $15,000 for your fees and agreeing to amend the CC and Articus to explicitly allow solar panels in compliance with state law. I think we should take it. Done, I said immediately. The settlement was finalized 2 weeks later. We received a check for $15,000, which more than covered Hernandez's fees and compensated us for the stress and time. The HOA also sent a letter to all homeowners explaining that solar panels were permitted and encouraging any interested homeowners to contact a list of approved installers. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 months later, on a Saturday morning, I was in the garage organizing tools when Emma ran in. Daddy, there's a strange lady taking pictures of our house. I walked outside and saw Patricia Dunmore standing on the sidewalk with her phone pointed at our roof. She was wearing sunglasses and a large hat, like she was trying to be inconspicuous, but her white Mercedes was parked right there on the street. Can I help you? I called out. She lowered her phone and walked toward me. I'm documenting violations. What violations? The HOA dropped the lawsuit. Solar panels are allowed now. Not those, Patricia said. She pointed at our front yard. Your grass is half an inch too tall. It's supposed to be maintained at 3 inches and I measured it at 3.5. That's a violation. I stared at her. You're measuring my grass. Someone has to maintain standards, Patricia said primly. Just because the board caved on the solar panels doesn't mean all rules are void. Over the next 3 weeks, I received violation notices about the following: my grass being too tall, my trash cans being visible from the street on a non-collection day, even though they were in my side yard behind a gate, my mailbox post needing repainting, even though it had been painted 6 months earlier, a small oil stain on my driveway, holiday decorations being displayed 3 days past the allowed date, even though we had taken down our 4th of July flag on July 5th, which was technically the 3rd day after the holiday ended on the 4th. Each violation notice included photos and measurements. Each was signed by Patricia Dunmore as a concerned community member and submitted to the new HOA board. To their credit, Frank Davies called me after the 3rd notice. James, I'm really sorry about this. Patricia is no longer on the board, so she has no authority to issue violations. But as a homeowner, she can submit complaints and we're technically obligated to investigate them. Are any of these actual violations? I asked, frustrated. Honestly, the grass one was borderline, but you mowed it. The trash cans were barely visible and behind a gate, which we think falls under the exception for reasonable screening. The mailbox looks fine to us. The oil stain is minor and you're working on cleaning it. The holiday flag thing is Patricia being absurdly literal about the rules. So you're not going to do anything? We're required to send you notice of complaints, but no, we're not pursuing any of these. Patricia is harassing you and we know it. Can you make her stop? Frank sighed. Not really. She has the right to submit complaints as a homeowner. We can ignore them, and we are, but we can't actually prevent her from making them. I called Hernandez. Can we get a restraining order or something? This is harassment. Probably not, he said. She's not threatening you or making contact. She's technically just submitting complaints through proper channels, even if it's clearly retaliatory. But document everything. If it escalates, we might have options. It escalated. The following Saturday, Maria and I took Emma to the Arizona Science Center in Phoenix for the day. We got home around 5 p.m., and as we pulled into our driveway, something felt wrong. Why is the side gate open? Maria asked. I had definitely closed it that morning. I always did, to keep Emma safe in the backyard. We got out of the car and I walked around to the side yard. The gate was not just open but damaged. The latch had been broken, forced open. Stay here, I told Maria and Emma. I went through the gate into the backyard. Everything looked normal at first. Then I looked at the power junction box where our solar system connected to the house electrical panel. The cover was hanging open. Wires had been cut. Maria, call the police, I shouted. 2 Gilbert police officers arrived within 15 minutes. I explained about the HOA dispute, the lawsuit, Patricia Dunmore's harassment, and now this vandalism. Your solar system was sabotaged. One officer asked, looking at the cut wires. Yes, it's going to cost thousands to repair and it's dangerous. Those are high-voltage lines. The officers took photos and wrote a report. They asked if I had any security cameras. I didn't, which I was now regretting. Do you have direct evidence that this Patricia Dunmore did this? The second officer asked. No, but she's been harassing us for months. She has a motive. Motive isn't enough for charges, the officer said, but we'll include all of this in the report. You should consider installing cameras. After they left, I called our solar installation company. They sent an emergency technician who confirmed that the damage was intentional vandalism. Someone had deliberately cut the wires connecting the panels to our electrical system. The repair would cost $3,000 and take a week. I was furious and scared. If Patricia had done this, what else might she do? The next day, I had security cameras installed all around our property. They were expensive, top-of-the-line models with night vision and cloud storage. If anyone came near our house again, I would have video evidence. I also filed a detailed report with the HOA board, explaining the vandalism and my suspicion that Patricia was responsible. Frank Davies called me the same day. James, this is serious. If Patricia did this, she could be prosecuted. But I have to tell you, I talked to her on the phone an hour ago and she denies it completely. She says she was in Sedona all weekend visiting her sister. Can she prove that? I don't know. I'm not going to interrogate her, but I wanted you to know she's denying involvement. For a week, nothing happened. The cameras recorded nothing but the occasional cat or pedestrian walking by. My solar system was repaired and we were back to generating electricity. Then, on a Thursday night at 11:30 p.m., my phone buzzed with an alert from the security system. Motion detected in the backyard. I pulled up the camera app and watched live video of someone in dark clothes and a hood walking around the side of my house toward the solar junction box. "Maria, call 911, I said, jumping out of bed. "Someone's in our backyard." I grabbed a flashlight and a baseball bat from the closet and ran downstairs. I could hear Maria on the phone with the emergency dispatcher. I turned on the backyard floodlights and yelled, "Police are on the way, get out of my yard." The figure in the backyard turned, and even with the hood up, I could see it was a woman. She ran toward the back fence, climbed over it with surprising agility, and disappeared into the desert scrub behind our neighborhood. I didn't chase her. Instead, I went to the junction box. She hadn't had time to damage anything. The police arrived 6 minutes later. I showed them the security footage. The video clearly showed someone approaching the junction box with what looked like wire cutters, but the hood and darkness made identification impossible. "Can you tell if it's a man or woman?" one officer asked. "It's a woman," I said. "I saw her when I turned on the lights. Average height, thin build." "That matches probably half the women in Gilbert," the officer said, "but we'll add this to the previous report." "Make sure you keep these videos backed up." After the police left, Maria and I sat at the kitchen table, too wired to sleep. "This is insane," she said. "What if she comes back? What if she tries to hurt us?" "I don't think she will. She's focused on the solar panels." "But why?" "The lawsuit is over. She lost. Why can't she just let it go?" I had been thinking about this. Because it's not about the panels anymore. It's about control and ego. She was HOA president, she was used to being in charge, and I challenged her authority. She lost publicly. She's not doing this rationally. So what do? We keep the cameras running and we hope she makes a mistake. She made a mistake. 3 nights later at 2 a.m., the motion alert woke me again. I grabbed my phone and watched the video. The same hooded figure was back, approaching from the same direction. But this time, I had set up an additional camera in a tree at the back of the property, angled to catch anyone climbing the fence. And this time, as the figure climbed over, the motion-activated light I had installed in the tree turned on, illuminating her face for just a moment. It was definitely Patricia Dunmore. She froze in the light, looked up at the camera, then ran. She didn't even try to approach the house this time, just fled back over the fence. I immediately downloaded the video to my computer and texted Hernandez, even though it was the middle of the night. Then I called the Gilbert Police non-emergency line and explained that I had video evidence of the person who had been trespassing on my property. By 10 a.m., I was at the police station showing the footage to a detective named Sarah Vance. She watched the video 3 times, zooming in on Patricia's face. "That's pretty clear," Detective Vance said. "You can positively identify this person?" "Yes, that's Patricia Dunmore. She lives in my neighborhood at 8721 East Desert Bloom Drive." "And you believe she's the same person who vandalized your solar equipment 2 weeks ago?" "Yes, the build and movements match and she has a clear motive. She was HOA president and we had a legal dispute over the solar panels. She lost and resigned from the board. Since then, she's been harassing us with frivolous violation complaints, and now this." Detective Vance nodded. "I'm going to get a warrant and have a conversation with Miss Dunmore. We'll see what she has to say." 2 days later, on a Saturday afternoon, I was washing my car when 3 police cars pulled onto Desert Bloom Drive. They stopped in front of Patricia's house, and I watched as Detective Vance and two uniformed officers went to the door. I couldn't hear what was being said, but after a few minutes, Patricia emerged in handcuffs. She was yelling something, her face red and angry. They put her in the back of one of the patrol cars. My phone rang. It was Detective Vance. Mr. Chen, I wanted to let you know we've arrested Patricia Dunmore for criminal trespassing and criminal damage. We executed a search warrant and found wire cutters in her garage that appear to match the damage to your electrical system. What happens now? She'll be arraigned on Monday. Given that this is non-violent property crime and she has no record, she'll probably bond out. But she'll be prohibited from having any contact with you, and she'll be facing criminal charges. Thank you, Detective. After hanging up, I told Maria everything. She looked relieved and worried at the same time. Do you think she'll leave us alone now? She has to. If she violates the no-contact order, she goes to jail. Over the next few weeks, the story spread through Sunset Ridge. Some neighbors were shocked. Others said they weren't surprised, that Patricia had always been obsessive about HOA rules. A few people even apologized to me, saying they had signed Patricia's original petition without understanding the full situation. Jeff Martinez came over with a six-pack of beer one evening, and we sat in my backyard talking. I heard they found evidence she was planning to damage the panels themselves, Jeff said. Like she had a ladder and tools ready to go up on your roof. I don't know if that's true, I said. But it wouldn't shock me. This whole thing is crazy, man, all over solar panels. It was never really about the panels, it was about power and control. Patricia's case moved through the court system slowly. She pleaded not guilty initially, but her attorney eventually negotiated a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to one count of criminal trespassing and one count of criminal damage, both misdemeanors. She was sentenced to 2 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and ordered to pay restitution for the cost of repairing the solar system and installing security cameras. The judge also imposed a 5-year order of protection, meaning Patricia could not come within 500 feet of our property or have any contact with us. At the sentencing hearing which I attended, the judge addressed Patricia directly. Miss Dunmore, you were in a position of leadership in your community, and you abused that position to harass a neighbor over a legitimate home improvement that was protected by state law. When you didn't get your way through legal channels, you resorted to vandalism and trespassing. This behavior is not only criminal, but it's deeply troubling. You showed a complete disregard for your neighbor's rights and for the law itself. I hope you use your probation period to reflect on your choices and make better decisions going forward. Patricia sat stone-faced through the entire hearing. She never looked at me. After it was over, Hernandez shook my hand in the courthouse hallway. That's as good an outcome as you could hope for. She's got a criminal record now, and if she violates probation, she goes to jail. I just want to move on with my life, I said. You can now. He was right. With Patricia on probation and legally barred from contacting us, the harassment stopped completely. She moved out of Sunset Ridge 3 months later. I heard through the neighborhood gossip chain that she had sold her house and moved to Scottsdale. Life slowly returned to normal. Our solar panels continued producing electricity, and our power bills stayed low. The system paid for itself within 7 years, exactly as projected. More importantly, several other families in Sunset Ridge installed solar panels over the next 2 years. Jeff Martinez was the first, putting a system on his roof just 4 months after Patricia's sentencing. Dave Sullivan followed 6 months later. Within 2 years, there were 15 houses in our neighborhood with solar panels, and the HOA had updated its architectural guidelines to streamline the approval process. The new HOA board, led by Frank Davies with Susan Ortega and Dave Sullivan as members, was more responsive and reasonable. They enforced rules fairly but weren't obsessive about minor issues. The neighborhood felt more relaxed. Emma, now 8 years old, did a school project about solar energy and included photos of our panels. She titled it, how my house makes electricity from the sun, and why that made some people mad. Her teacher loved it, and Emma won second place in the school science fair. One afternoon in April, almost 3 years after the whole ordeal started, Maria and I were sitting on our back patio watching Emma play. The solar panels on our roof were quietly doing their job, converting Arizona sunshine into electricity. "Do you ever regret it?" Maria asked. "Fighting the HOA, all the stress, everything with Patricia," I thought about it. "No, we did the right thing. We were protecting our rights and following the law. And look around the neighborhood now. All these other families have solar panels because we stood up to the HOA. If we had backed down, Patricia would still be president and nobody would have solar." True. It just got so ugly for a while. It did, but that was Patricia's choice, not ours. We just wanted to lower our electricity bill and help the environment. "Those panels are ugly," Maria said in a mock whiny voice, imitating Patricia's complaint from 3 years earlier. I laughed. "You know what? They're the most beautiful thing I see when I pull into our driveway. Because they represent standing up for yourself." "No," I said, "because they're saving us about $3,000 a year in electricity." Maria threw a napkin at me and we both laughed. Later that evening, after Emma was in bed, I was checking email when I saw a message from Frank Davies with the subject line, "Update on Neighborhood Solar Program." He wrote that the HOA had partnered with a solar company to offer group rates for any homeowners interested in installing panels. 23 families had already signed up. "By the way," Frank's email continued, "I wanted to thank you again for standing up to the old board about the solar panels. I know it was difficult, but you were right, and your case changed our entire community for the better. Sunset Ridge is now known in Gilbert as a progressive neighborhood that embraces renewable energy. That's something to be proud of." I showed the email to Maria. She smiled. "See, you're a neighborhood hero." "I just wanted solar panels," I said, "and now the whole neighborhood benefits." That's how it works. Someone has to be willing to fight the fight. She was right, of course. Change doesn't happen because everyone agrees from the start. It happens because someone stands up, refuses to back down, and forces the issue. Sometimes that person faces resistance, harassment, even vandalism and criminal behavior from those who oppose change. But in the end, if you're standing on solid ground, if the law supports you and justice is on your side, you can win. It might take time, money, stress, and courage, but you can win. Our solar panels kept producing electricity year after year. They saved us money, reduced our carbon footprint, and represented something more important: the principle that doing the right thing is worth fighting for, even when powerful people try to stop you. Patricia Dunmore eventually completed her probation. I never saw her again after she moved away, and I never wanted to. She was a cautionary tale about what happens when ego and control become more important than reason and law. As for me and Maria and Emma, we lived happily in Sunset Ridge with our supposedly ugly solar panels. Every time I looked at them, I remembered Judge Reeves telling the HOA attorney that state law was unambiguous and that the case was a loser. I remembered my neighbors standing up at that HOA meeting and demanding a vote. I remembered the moment Patricia's face appeared on my security camera, caught in the act of trying to sabotage our property one more time. Most of all, I remembered that sometimes you have to stand up to bullies, even when they're hiding behind official titles and organizational authority. The law protected us because Arizona legislators had recognized that encouraging renewable energy was more important than giving HOAs unlimited power to enforce aesthetic preferences. Our solar panels weren't just ugly, according to Patricia Dunmore. They were a threat to her control, her vision of what the neighborhood should be, her authority as HOA president. She couldn't tolerate being challenged, couldn't accept that state law overrode HOA covenants, couldn't handle losing. But the panels stayed on our roof, producing clean electricity from Arizona sunshine, protected by state law and supported by our neighbors. In the end, that's what mattered. Not Patricia's opinion about aesthetics, not her fears about property values, not her need for control. Just the panels, the sunshine, and the law that protected both. On the 3-year anniversary of installing the solar system, our installation company sent an automated email with statistics. Our panels had produced 43,200 kilowatt-hours of electricity, offset 30,000 pounds of carbon dioxide emissions, and saved us $9,400 in electricity costs. I printed the email and put it on our refrigerator, right next to Emma's drawing of our house with its robot windows on the roof. "What's that for?" Emma asked, seeing me put it up. "Just a reminder," I said. "Of what?" "That doing the right thing pays off." Emma studied the numbers. "Is that why the lady was so mad? Because we were saving money?" "No, honey. She was mad because she didn't like change and she didn't like being told she was wrong. But she was wrong. The judge said so." "Yes, she was." "Then why was she so mean?" It was a good question, one I had asked myself many times over the past 3 years. Some people have trouble admitting when they're wrong, and when they lose, they get angry instead of learning from it. Emma thought about this, then nodded. "I'm glad we have the robot windows. They're cool." "Me too, Emma, me too." As the sun set over Gilbert, Arizona, our solar panels caught the last rays of daylight and converted them into electricity. They would keep doing that for another 25 years at least, long after anyone remembered Patricia Dunmore or the fight over whether they should be allowed. The panels weren't ugly. They never had been. They were practical, efficient, environmentally friendly, and most importantly, they were legal. State law protected them, not because bureaucrats wanted to override HOAs, but because Arizona recognized that encouraging solar energy was more important than preserving the aesthetic preferences of HOA boards. Patricia Dunmore had whined that the solar panels were ugly, but her opinion didn't matter. The law protected them, my neighbors supported them, and justice prevailed. Sometimes that's all you can ask for. That when you do the right thing, follow the rules, and stand your ground, the system works the way it's supposed to. It worked for us. Our solar panels stayed on our roof. Patricia faced consequences for her criminal behavior, and Sunset Ridge became a better community because of it. That night, as I locked up the house and turned off the lights, I glanced out the window at our roof. The panels were dark rectangles against the night sky, resting until morning when the sun would return, and they would resume their quiet work of converting light into energy. They weren't just panels anymore. They were a symbol of standing up for what's right, of not backing down to bullies, of trusting the law and fighting when necessary. And yes, they saved us a lot of money on electricity bills. That didn't hurt either.